Now that large language models have become capable of reasoning tasks and writing code, it's fair to ask whether they might be able to write code that improves their own performance. That's exactly the question that was recently asked by researchers in Tokyo, who teamed up with Oxford and Cambridge universities to study that question, as described in this paper. The answer was yes, and more than yes. In fact, the language model created a whole new approach, LRML, which placed it at the top of this leaderboard, using a novel method that had not yet been tried or documented in any academic research paper. Here's a look at the function that was created with an MT bench score of 7.916. Here's a look at the baseline, including the popular method DPO. None of these baselines have quite achieved 7.916 on MT bench. And here's LRML by comparison. In fact, the language model generated at least 7 different objective functions, all of which exceeded the baseline performance of DPO. Let's take a closer look at this. For their experiment, the authors chose a large language model tuning activity known as preference optimization, which seeks to ensure that the outputs of language models are relevant and useful. This type of tuning can result in adjustments to the tone, or style, or complexity of responses, for example. And in practice, doing this can involve trade-offs between sometimes conflicting goals. It's worth noting that the authors considered performance optimization to be a prime candidate for this experiment. Let's take a look at the experiment first, and then we'll look at why performance optimization might be a prime candidate. That way, we can generalize the implications of this remarkable result. First, here's a demo of the moment when GPT-4 created a previously unknown algorithm for training language models to align with human preferences. There were 3 steps for this. First, the researchers prompted the LLM with an initial task and problem description. There's also an option to add examples. Next, the language model must produce 3 things: a hypothesis, a name for the new method, and code that implements the method proposed. Lastly, the code is used in a training run, and the performance for that is recorded, and the language model is updated so it knows the results. Now, here's an interesting observation. Researchers noticed that the language model kept alternating between different kinds of strategies, just like a data scientist might do. For one classification task, for example, it started off with a smoothed cross-entropy objective. Then it decided to tune the smoothing temperature. Then it explored a loss variant using squared error, which improved the performance. And then those 2 very different methods were combined, leading to yet another significant improvement. And this innovative new loss function has several interesting properties. For one, it's not convex, and it beat the base model, KL divergence. The key point is that this process is not merely performing a random search of methods found in existing research. It's actually doing systematic testing, similar to how developers might do. Even the name it created for its new approach was very appropriate and quite accurate. Now, since all the experiments were done on MT bench, it was theoretically possible that they might overfit to the interactions produced by that tool. So the team also evaluated a holdout sample on alpaca eval as well. Here are the results from that. The models created by this LLM are highlighted. LRML is now the new benchmark, and basically it aced the leaderboard. From what I can see, I'd be betting on this horse. Okay. Now, let's generalize the implications of this. Why was the field of preference optimization considered to be a prime candidate for this experiment? There are several reasons, and as we list them, let's think about what other types of problems have these same properties. 1. This activity requires alignment to human preferences, which are complex and change over time, so adaptability is key. 2. Solving this problem relies on human feedback, and language models are ideally suited for using that kind of feedback directly. 3. For this activity, personalized outputs might add value based on nuanced feedback from users. 4. Existing methods for doing this, like adjusting hyperparameters and balancing trade-offs, are very manual and time-consuming, but language models are efficient at this and scalable. And 5. As we saw, language models are able to propose new kinds of solutions that experts didn't think of and that outperform existing methods. This is a big advantage all by itself. So, how do we generalize this? What other types of problems have these same qualities? One obvious case is any other situation where our goal is to design a reward function to be used for reinforcement learning, like this example, where a robot was trained to do the very difficult trick of pen spinning, which no programmer had succeeded at until a language model named Eureka figured out how to create a reward function for doing that. Extending from this, it's fair to say that language models might accelerate many other kinds of tedious and time-consuming workflows, including designing new model architectures or optimizing algorithms. So that's an area. Yet another interesting application might be generating code to create virtual worlds, leveraging information that we know about what humans consider to be interesting or fascinating. In sum, it's fair to say that the implications of this experiment are wide-ranging, and that some of the new worlds and applications they'll discover will surely amaze us. Meanwhile, thanks for watching, and see you next time.